Webale nnyo webale ddala omukulu Joel atukoledde bulungi nnyo tukoleze bulungi mu byangungu nze byesobodde okuwamba kubanga oluzungu balulidde mangu sipiri yayiriyiri bagambye Buganda is safe. Buganda sente zo bwoziteekayo zijja kukubisaamu amagoba ate mu bwangu ate zijja kukomawo era bakugambye osobola okuteekayo sente asobola n'okusevinga mu Luganda kyeki okutereka mu sako wa diaspora ne bagamba bakoze social investment batadde sente mu bantu aba bulijjo mu bantu era development eri mu bantu kale no tugenda kudduka misiri gya iriri ebintu bino kyakuddamu obifune ku YouTube channel eya Buganda UK ate ne ku Facebook page eya Buganda UK kati gwe ali ku mukutu guno nkusaba onkole akantu kamu tuweeyo ka share ogende nga osharinga abantu abalala basobola okuba nga bajja ku Zoom eno kubanga obubaka ate obuddako bwo bw'amaanyi bwa ddala nkusaba obeere nga oyita ku bantu abalala batweyungeko weni
tweyanziza nnyo ssebo omwami Muga tweyanziza nnyo ow'ekitiibwa Waggwa Nsibirwa era tweyanziza nnyo ow'ekitiibwa David Mpanga obubaka obwo bwe mutuwadde bubadde bwa kitalo nnyo bubadde bulungi nnyo busufu abantu ndowooza banyumiddwa nnyo era katusuubire nti tujja kufuna ebirungi eddako ebisingako kati mu programu yaffe tuli behind schedule tuli mabegako naye tujja kugezaako tusambyeko ekitundu kyaffe ekiddako kya bya finance bya nsimbi tulina omukungu agenda otuwa ekitundu kino era ye Moses Kiwanuka Sebo Moses Kiwanuka omukungu wa Ssaabasajja oli ku mpewo
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I welcome you to Ttabamiruka 2020 Buganda Kingdom Diaspora Webinar. My name is Moses Kiwanuka. I advise Omubaka wa Ssaabasajja to England and Ireland. Kunsonga is investment and sourcing finance. So I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to just discuss with you some of the things that you may already know, but perhaps putting them more in the context of what we see globally at the moment. To begin, I think it's important to reference the earlier presentation by OHT Waggwa Nsibirwa. He discussed the opportunities and projects that currently exist in the kingdom. Some of the key areas he talked about, just to jog our memories, real estate, of course, featured very heavily, mining, education, healthcare, fintech, as in leveraging, I think, some of the existing infrastructure of the mobile telecoms in the kingdom, tourism of the heritage sites and more. And last but not least, the farming, the agriculture side as regards to farming, agro-processing, and marketing of those products. No doubt there are many more, but I think that was a very fair highlight of some of the low-hanging fruit that are right before us in the kingdom. Before I talk about sourcing financing for those particular areas, I think it would be remiss of me not to discuss the current environment, which I think we've all been living every day through this year of the pandemic, but also more so for the last 3 to 4 years. What we have actually seen is many of the large economic powers, in particularly some of the superpowers, looking more inwardly, prioritizing their own issues, internal issues, over the rest of the globe. So it resulted in some level of protectionism, protecting their jobs, trying to push their exports. And that has resulted in a number of strenuous situations. I mean, we've seen trade wars between the big economic powers and continuing sanctions and which are always impacting, the fallout always impacts the small guy around the block. There are geopolitical shifts. Some of us, I live in England, but I'm sure all of us in Europe and the world are well aware of the Brexit and the large impact that may well have once it comes into force a few weeks from now. Of course, as Buganda, we are impacted through the Commonwealth, the common market, the impact on the Ugandan economy. So we will be seeing some of that come through over the course of time. In addition, we've seen low interest rates all over the world, with I think many of the European economies having central bank rates that are at 0% as we speak. It was a few decades ago when Japan went into negative interest rate territory, something that was unprecedented. But funny enough, sooner than we knew, it's with us in Europe and many other countries. The impact of the pandemic cannot be underestimated in many ways, and that we will see for some time to come as nations struggle to find a vaccine, struggle to protect themselves, their workforce, their economies. A lot of money has been released into those economies to keep things running. And as a result, there's invariably going to be some impact on what those very nations are able to do in terms of their overseas development budgets and other support that we have been enjoying in partnership with them. So bring us back to sources of financing. You know, many suggestions out there, but it very much depends on the type of projects you're running. You know, what is the type of investment? What is the size of that investment? You know, some are very high, capital intensive businesses. Others have huge startup costs. So if we're looking at an example of the construction space, you know, the upfront costs are quite significant as you build up the units, or if it's a road, or whatever it might be. But as it starts generating revenue, your continuous costs start balancing out over time. Whereas if you're running a logistics business, that is both high intense in terms of startup capital in acquiring the assets you need, but also the running capital, the operating costs are significantly high, but the payout is also equally fair. So it all depends on what type of business you are considering at that point in time. So I would suggest that as we think about how to source financing, we take some time back and understand, the full approach. Feasibility studies are absolutely essential, though some of the best entrepreneurs have just kind of dived in with both feet and just lived day by day. But still, there is some high-end, back of a napkin calculation in terms of what is this going to cost me? What is the likely outcome? What do I have currently in my inventory, in my bank account? What type of skills do I have to enable me to deliver this successfully? And where the gaps are, can I find partners? Can I find sources that would enable me to complete the picture and deliver the outcome that is desired? So there are conversations around this. So when it comes to sources of finance, obviously the first place you usually begin is you look at your own personal situation. Do you have some assets that you can leverage, as in borrow money against? Do you have some cash that's sitting there? Or do you have some low-hanging sources where you can borrow money with no intensive pressure to repay, sort of silent investors? That is usually a good place to start. The next is really looking at angel investors. Some of the people around you that are keen to do some good in other parts of the world. They may have meager resources, they may have large resources, but as we know, every dollar, every pound, every euro counts. So how can you galvanize those people into something that is more with they're more interested in the social benefits. They tend not to care so much about the return. They're looking for a moderate return, which, in the current economy, you're always probably going to make a better return south of the hemisphere than you would in the north, given current economic trends. But by and large, the most important thing is to be able to deliver successfully and engage them in seeing how they've impacted the socioeconomic side of wherever the place is or where the type of business is. So that is one aspect. So angel investors are important. Strategic partnerships, I would almost say one of the best avenues is to find someone who has a business interest and expertise and would be interested in expanding that capability to the destination, country, region where you want to go. For us in Buganda, I think we have so many things that we could market and share that would attract investors to the environment. And first of all, I think it's important to highlight that we already have an infrastructure around us as a nation that we're able to leverage in terms of the investment guidelines, the protections, the guarantees, tax holidays, and all those incentives that give an investor, a lender, comfort that their investment will be protected and safeguarded in all cases. Now, I did talk about size and type. If you're doing large projects, millions of dollars, there are other considerations. Big money requires big guarantees, big assurances, much tighter risk management. So there are various organizations that will advise and monitor different types of risk and insure against those risks. So that's some detail there that we perhaps can't cover in this brief opener, but I'm more than happy to answer some of that in the Q&A if anyone has specific questions. And please do use the chat to direct any questions to me if that's helpful. Other sources, venture capitalists, they're seeking a high return. They want a very strong business proposition, a strong management team in place. But the beauty with them, they will open up their support a little bit too far in that they would also want to be very much engaged in the business, in the governance. They would want someone on the board. They would have review sessions. So they will help to mentor, guide in order to protect your joint investment. And that's a good incentive in our environment where execution and delivery can be somewhat constrained, not because of our inefficiencies as individuals, but the cross-dependency on many departments, many people, does create an added risk, and things take a little bit longer than they normally do. So those are some high-level sources of funding, which many of you will know. But I've always come back to the small scale. That if you're going to start something in a small project, a medium project in Uganda, sometimes it may be good to grow it from the grassroots. And how does one go about that? Diaspora, we've lived abroad. We have our financial footprint in the countries where we live. We have credit records. And we are monitored and tracked and reported on, and you can get it at the press of a button on a computer, and you're good to go. The good news is that Uganda is emerging in the same way. So there is a Financial Intelligence Association that they're able to do credit ratings on corporates, on individuals, provided you have a footprint, an account, or a facility here in country. And those can now be set up. Many of the domestic financial institutions are offering diaspora banking. And I know there was a recent commentary around needing a national identification number called a NIN in order to open an account or run an account. My understanding is that that's been exempted for the diaspora accounts until it's up, we're sure that everyone has an in. But that said, you can open up a diaspora account and start creating a financial footprint presence in Uganda. It comes in very handy later when you start setting up a business, or when you want to buy land, when you want to use the land you already own to secure a financial facility to do something else. You already known to the organization, rather than coming straight in from wherever we are, with no introduction. So I would strongly recommend that you consider some of that. And you don't have to put much money on it, but you just have to put little, just to show that you're there, you're active, and drive there. And there's mortgage facilities here, and other services. Again, those could be sources for doing smaller projects, especially for those who have some assets in country that they can leverage to raise money. And last but not least, I would very much urge a potential investor to find any possible way of doing more research and understanding how things fit together. The beauty is you have the offices of Ababaka Basaba Sejjaaka across the globe. There are contacts, friends, network who will advise you, guide you in the diaspora, but also domestically within Uganda, and give you ideas of on the pitfalls, things to look out for. Things don't always work as you expect them to do, but they actually work. And we've seen a lot of success stories, as some shared by OHT Wagwan Sibirwa this morning, some of the projects that the Kingdom has undertaken. So with a parting shot, I urge you to continue to think Uganda. I think your being on this program is already points to that. Buganda is open for business, and all of us are here to support each other. I leave you with a small video clip which runs for about a minute. It just talks about diaspora banking. In this case, I used Equity Bank because I've actually have a diaspora account with them, so I thought it was an easier one to do. But others, Stanbic and others, all offer the same, similar facilities. So with that, may I wish you a nice day at this conference summit, and we look forward to engaging in 2021 to grow Buganda. Thank you.
webale ddala omukungu Moses Kiwanuka ebya ssente eyo nusu nze nusu ngiyita siringi. Tugenda kudduka emisiri gyayiriiri mu kiseera kino nga tweteekateekera item eddako basebo ne bannyabo tugenda ngenda kusaba mukulu Kalanzi mutandika okuteekateeka rooms ze tugenda okuteesezaamu ate muzitume n'amannya buli omu ategeere room mwajja okgenda nga item edge tugenda okuddako emaze okuggwa. Nkungu Winnie ngenda kusaba weteeketeeke okuyita Sejjaaka enkufu ajje naye atubuulire industrializing Buganda bwe neefaanana ate bwe neeba. Naye nga mukulu Kalanzi mweteeketeeke okuba nti rooms muzeera muziteekateeka muteekemu obutebe tujje tutuule tuteese ebyenkulaakulana. Eno ye Buganda Convention ey'omulundi ogusookera eddala Scientific 2020 omulamwa Vision of Buganda 2050. Buganda Vision 2050. Buganda enerabika etya. Right. Winnie.
Neyanziza nnyo ssebo neyanzige. Bannange tubaaniriza nnyo era tusanyuse nnyo okubalaba ku mulundi gwaffe guno ogusoose ogwa scientific. Ndowooza buli omu abugumye Buganda tugiraba etambula egenda mu maaso ebirala mugaleewo amatu Buganda etambule. Buganda is open for business as usual. Ku programu yaffe tulina Professor Samuel Kisaache Sejjaaka, mwami mubazi wa bitabo, mwami musomesa, mwami wa bya business. Tugenda kumuyita ku kaseera kano atuwe presentation yaffe eddako eya industrialization.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to have been invited to make this presentation to you regarding industrializing Buganda with special focus on rural areas. I have already been introduced. My name is Samuel Sejjaaka, and I am a professor of accounting and finance with a special interest in public finance. And this is a topic which is close to my heart and in which I believe. So I am honored to be presenting to you on this topic. First of all, I want to start by sharing a few facts with you that are critical to understanding why it is important to industrialize. Today, as I present, you realize that Uganda has a population distribution by age of people who are below 35 years old being 80.7%. And technically, this shows that a lot of the people in our population are dependents, and they depend on us for sustenance, for education, and housing and food and all those other things. So if these people are all below that age, a lot of them are also in that dependency group, and a lot of them are also just starting to work. So that is why, because of the population pressure, it is very important to be industrializing. The second image I want to share with you is a map of Uganda showing the population pressure. Again, you will see that a lot of the population pressure is around the regions of Lake Victoria. So the population pressure per square kilometer for the areas of Buganda ranges from about 92 people to 195 people per square kilometer. In other areas, it goes as high as 8,940 people per square kilometer, especially in the cities. So a lot of the cities are also around the lake area, and this increases the population pressure. For a long time, a lot of these people have been depending on agriculture. And as you can see from this map, that has not made matters any much better. Again, if you take an average for Buganda, you will see that more than 22% of the people in this region live below the poverty line. Except for Wakiso and Kampala, which are outliers, the average distribution of poverty is about 22% in the region. So all these people are dependent on agriculture, and I think it is time for us to rethink whether agriculture is the right way to change. Let us just look at some statistics here for you, which are very important, so that you understand the difficulty that we face. Our GDP as a country is about $34 billion. This is for 44 million people. So that means our income per capita is about $780 per person. But life expectancy has been increasing. That is 63%. We have a Gini coefficient of 42.8%, i.e., that is talking to the level of poverty. 42.8% of the people in this region are living on less than $2 a day. Our Human Development Index is average. We have a labor force of 16.8 million people. And of that labor force, 76% are employed in agriculture. And agriculture is contributing 22% of our GDP. So you have more people in the labor force in agriculture contributing a diminishing amount. There's a very clear trade imbalance, and coffee is only providing 455 million of our export earnings. I use coffee here because it is a crop that is grown mostly in this region. In this chart here, I show you what I have been saying, the falling contribution from primary production versus the stagnant number employed in the sector. And I've said we have about 76% of the population still employed in agriculture. But from between 2009 and 2019, the contribution of agriculture has fallen from 33.71% to 22%. So the pressure is increasing for us to think about value addition. So you can see from that chart that services have grown in contribution, yet the primary source of sustenance for our people is agriculture, and its contribution is not growing. So that is where the poverty really is coming from. And that is why we must be concerned. If I take coffee as an example, the value of exports for coffee in Uganda last year was 455 million. Germany, which does not grow any coffee, produced $18 billion from the industry so far in 2020, from imports of 1.2 million tons. And probably you will find that a lot of those imports are from Uganda. So this is why industrialization is important. Coffee tells the story that if you don't add value to your products, you are on a losing mission. If you still sell primary products under worsening terms of trade, then you have a big problem. So you can see, if you take just the central region, the area of coffee, which is very important to us, is 136,000 hectares. And we have about 611 households involved in the production of coffee. So 38% of the coffee comes from the central region. And if we're adding value to that, probably we would be increasing the value of the incomes of these households. The same is true for the whole of Uganda, but this chart will give you an idea. So Uganda is followed by Western at 23% and Eastern at 22%. But that is the story of coffee, for which we're earning only 455 million But that is the money that comes into the country. It's not even the money that the farmers share, because at every stage, there are middlemen who take away part of the earnings of these people. You can also see the prices there for Robusta and coffee. So if you take 2017, the export price for Robusta per kilogram was $1.68 per kilogram. For Arabica was 2.49. So again, this would not, for a kilo of coffee, if this is for a kilo of coffee, for you who live in the diaspora, you have an idea. If you are talking about a cup of coffee at Starbucks or one of those coffee outlets, what would the price be? But this is what we are supposed to be retaining in country. And that is why this issue of industrialization is very important to us. So you can see, while the coffee has been increasing, but our population has also, coffee production has been increasing, but our population has also been increasing much faster. So in 2017, we produced 4.3 million bags for a value of $462 million. And you can see that. So that is the story of coffee, which now brings me to the question of industrialization, with emphasis on rural areas. First of all, there is no industrialization blueprint for Africa. Each country has to search for and conceptualize and steer its own way towards unemployment creating and value-adding industrial sector. Under Uganda Vision 2040 and the second National Development Plan 2015-16 to 2019-20, industrialization is identified as a means to transforming Uganda's economy into a middle income. Which brings us to the question, how should we be looking at industrialization in terms of the Buganda area? Should we use a top-down approach? Should we use a bottom-up approach? Or should we use a hybrid approach? If you're using a top-down approach, you have government making policies and pushing them down to the people. If you have a bottom-up approach, you have what you call street smart operatives pushing an agenda and making that a national agenda. A hybrid would be a mix of both models. So this is the question we have for the rural areas in Buganda. My own recommendation would be a bottom-up approach, and that is where I want to concentrate. You can read about the others, but under the bottom-up approach, you have implementation through everyday problem-solving strategies of street-level bureaucrats. And here in mind, I have the Abataka, Buganda. In this case, successful implementation starts from the bottom by identifying the networks of actors involved in actual policy delivery. So what I am really talking about here is, how do we, one, identify the different products that are produced in different areas, which different agricultural products that are produced in the different areas, and how do we scale up, how do we industrialize the production of these products themselves so that they can be able to satisfy the industrial production which we are talking about. The alternative is to use a hybrid. Again, I'm not going to focus on the hybrid, but you can have a look at it because it combines the elements of the top down and the bottom up. So if you're looking at the top, you're looking at Mengo coming up with some kind of policy on industrialization, but you're looking at the Bataka implementing this policy. You're looking at the policy being empirical and pragmatic so that it blends central steering and local autonomy. We know that there has been an attempt at zoning, growing different products in different areas. So what can be grown where, and how can that production be scaled up to an industrial level? And that's very important to understand. You'd first need to scale up what you're producing in order to be able to have factories that add value. So specifically, what approach should we use? One, there should be grassroots mobilization of commercial production of agricultural products. Many people producing enough to keep the factories that we're thinking of working. So there has to be industrial scale agriculture first before you talk about value addition. Then you need to organize the stakeholders into marketing cooperatives so that you have standards and you have the right types of varieties of products being grown and marketed. We have been there before, and we know that the cooperatives in their day did work. I do not know why they are not working now, but I definitely think that this is a good option for us to look at how we're going to industrialize. So once you have the people organized into these marketing cooperatives, then you can talk about value addition. And that value addition is when you now improve the product, the primary products, process them, and make sure that they have a longer life and can be exported or consumed in the region and locally. That is the bottom-up approach, which I think would best suit Buganda. So in conclusion, this is what I want to say. One, I do think that industrialization is a very critical matter, and it has to be considered seriously in order to take people out of poverty, especially in the rural areas. We need to use a hybrid bottom-up approach to industrialize. As I have noted in this very brief presentation, the first stage in industrialization is to scale up production and organize producers using the Abataka networks. Increase the production and quality of what you produce. Then, number three, let's address the bottlenecks to industrialization at the macro level. At the district level or at the SAZA level, whichever unit we choose to use. We need to find affordable credit, we need to improve the infrastructure, we need to address the skills gap, and we need to make sure the products we are growing are of the right quality. A good example that has been brought to my mind is the introduction of avocados. And this is the kind of situation where you are not able to meet the standards of what can be exported. And that is because the people are not organized in a proper manner. So you need a good policy environment in order to do this. Four, scaling up production requires capacity to find markets. And here I've talked about cooperative unions. Cooperative unions are a proven vehicle for quality and price delivery. So we need to make sure that these unions are working. Five, we need then to invest in value addition, that is the factories, and the right way to industrialize is by ensuring that there's appropriate demand and supply for industrial sustainability. So this is a chicken and egg situation which we need to address in order to deal with the problem of industrialization. I thank you so much for listening to me, and I'll wait for feedback and answer some of the questions and some of the areas that I may not have been able to cover very well. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Tweyanze nnyo, tweyanzirige omupu Ssabakenku Samuel Sejjaaka. Nsabidde ono okubagamba nti asobola okubuuza ekibuuzo kye mu Luganda akibuuze, tewali buzibu, obubaka busobola okutuuka. We twogera kati nsaba mukulu Kalanzi rooms zaffe zibeere nga ziri ready kubanga item eddako gye tugendamu.